March started out strong, setting out in Austell, Georgia, capturing NS 1068, the Erie Heritage Unit leading NS Train 223. This was the very last Heritage Unit I needed to see leading, now marking all 20 captured, leading, and in daylight. Two 23 was just finishing up work at Whitaker Yard. Local crew G89 was powering the train today from Whitaker, taking it to Atlanta, after the original crew out of Chattanooga ran out of time. A long 10 to 15 minutes pass when the conductor is dropped off at the head end before given the clearance to proceed south for Inman Yard. I didn't shoot the whole train, being I had to get to work, but at the last minute, I noticed a TTX well car supporting breast cancer awareness. On March 3rd at 10:18, I hopped over to Inman Yard as NS Train 220 hides in the background, with EMDX 7233 at the lead. This is one of many SD70 ACU leaser engines that the Kansas City Southern Railway has been using for quite some time. I never had the opportunity to catch it on the road, but luckily they were visibly seen working Inman Yard, approaching the Marietta Road overpass. Norfolk Southern photographer Casey Thomason was out for this train as well, capturing the termination of Train 220 in Atlanta. On March 4th, CSX train X21104, an extra Q211, is moving northbound on the SG Main, passing a yard job at Howell Yard in Atlanta. 211 runs out of Louisville, Kentucky, but was rerouted to run south out of Nashville, going via Birmingham, Alabama, and LaGrange, Georgia, connecting to the A&WP subdivision turning north towards Atlanta. They were also combined with train Q143, so work in Fairburn was performed en route. Now, after a fresh crew change in Atlanta, they are back on their normal route and as a normal train as they head for Greenwood, South Carolina. Then, after getting off work, I went straight to Kennesaw as train K442 was on the move northbound, with UP AC 44CW 6877 leading BNSF ES 44AC 6105 and CSX CW 40-9 9000. On March 5th, I was just fixing to depart Fairburn as I got caught by CSX train Q64605. This was a southbound reroute manifest freight train that had just come from the Georgia Road in Augusta due to the Fitzgerald sub curfew. They were pulling towards South End Fairburn to swap crews before proceeding south, heading for Birmingham, Alabama. At 0807 on March 7th, CSX train Q15407 heads northbound, passing by Elizabeth on the outskirts of Marietta, Georgia. On the 8th, at 20:48 Central Standard Time, NS Train 154 approaches the Moore Street grade crossing in Oxford, Alabama, moving at track speed. The East End had been undergoing track work all day. This portion of track had just been freshly ground by the work crews. On March 10th, it was a busy day in Atlanta for NS, as more track work is underway on the Coca-Cola curve. They were hard at work as NS Train 98G slowly moves southbound with some kind of work train. The engineer blows his horn as they slowly pass the work crews. After getting off work later that night, I get a tip that CSX train Q21109 had a pair of SD40-2s on it for power. I was able to capture them, but with barely any light left, passing through the city of Smyrna, Georgia. CSX then ran a nice parade of trains afterwards as I moved to Marietta, first seeing Q54109, powered by YN2 AC44CW 342 and YN2 CW40-8 7764. Q541 is a daily manifest freight train running between Cincinnati, Ohio and Waycross, Georgia. The 7764 was the very last Dash 8 I was able to capture before CSX officially retired the CW40-8 and Dash 9 fleet. Then came train Q142, a daily intermodal train out of Jacksonville, Florida, heading for North Baltimore, Ohio. A nice treat to end the night before I went home was train K494, powered by CSX ES44AH 800, CSX ET44AH 3324, and UP C44ACCTE 5782 as they pass by Elizabeth.
Third block Northland, K8, 494, 08, engine 800 tech.
The next morning, CSX train Q154 is seen departing Atlanta, passing the old Tilford Yard, with CM44AC 7008 at the lead. I finally got one of these new rebuilt AC44CWs leading in daylight. Now skip ahead to March 16th as I was just leaving Manchester, Georgia. CSX Q601 is seen at CP 5th Avenue, heading to the next signal at Childs to tie the train down. CW40-9 9016 was trailing in position 2 of 3 in the engine consist. Q601 runs between Waycross, Georgia and New Orleans, Louisiana, running across the Fitzgerald, Lineville, A&WP, SNNA South, and the NO&M subdivisions. At this point in time, the coronavirus started to affect the United States, but nothing was affecting train traffic for now. After shooting Q601, I could barely get out of Manchester city limits when I heard train Q645 passing Warm Springs on the radio. I pulled off at the Judson Bullich Road crossing, the last accessible crossing on the other side of CP Childs, to capture them. Thanks to the engineer for the friendly horn toots. Train Q645 is a daily manifest freight train running out of Birmingham bound for Waycross, Georgia. Continuing on my trip back to Atlanta, I then heard Q183 on the radio. I pulled off on a side road along the CSX A&WP sub at Moreland Siding as they slowly approached my location. A new overpass behind me had just opened up, replacing a railroad crossing on the ground. Q183 is one of the BNSF trains serving the Fairburn Intermodal Ramp, coming from San Bernardino, California, interchanging with CSX in Birmingham. They had briefly stopped running on a clear signal for some reason, I'd guess to see if the Fairburn ramp was ready for them. But we'll skip ahead now to St. Patrick's Day, as my luck turned out to be pretty good. Train Q581 is seen passing through downtown Atlanta, approaching Circle Connection, with SD70 Mac 4769 at the lead. Later that night, after getting off work, loaded coal train N319-16 heads south through the city of Marietta with barely any daylight left. The square was very quiet tonight, as mostly everyone was at home with a mandatory quarantine order in effect for the state of Georgia. N319's train originally comes from the Sugar Camp Mine in Aiken, Illinois, on the Evansville Western Railway. They then interchange the train with CSX in Evansville, Indiana, and heads for the Santee Cooper's Cross Generating Station in Cross, South Carolina. There was another train ahead of them, so they would have to stop around Lock Air and wait for a route into Atlanta. One train I haven't shot in a while is Road Local A703, seen here departing Cartersville, Georgia on March 19th, heading for the Georgia Northeastern at Elizabeth. YN2 AC44CW 54 was the power today, running long hood forward. March 21st. A lucky capture goes out to CSX train Q241-19, running the A&WP subdivision heading towards LaGrange, then turning south on the Lineville sub towards Manchester. CSX SD70 Mac 4530 was at the lead as they pass South End Fairburn. Q241 carries loaded auto racks out of Louisville, Kentucky, bound for Baldwin, Florida. When running through Atlanta, they normally run the A and B side to Manchester, but I guess they insisted on taking the long route instead. Later that night, having a trip out to Birmingham, Alabama, I made a pit stop in Irondale before returning to Atlanta, arriving just in time for NS Train 182 entering Norris Yard. As 182 slowly continues inbound into the yard, local job AB-27 departs Norris heading towards Ensley, Alabama. I arrived back in Atlanta at just after 2 a.m., seeing that CSX train K443 had just departed Pine Street, routed through downtown. I waited at Circle Connection as they come out from under the CNN Center and State Farm Arena. They had a nice, colorful power consist, powered by KCSM ES44AC 4655, UPC45 ACCTE 7497, and CSX AC44CW 519. To those who haven't visited this area before, I wouldn't recommend being out here this late at night. Things can get pretty sketchy around here. On a nice and foggy morning on the 24th, a rare CSX train K851 is departing Atlanta heading towards Manchester. This is a loaded molten sulfur train bound for Winston, Florida. We don't usually get to see these trains often. A brand new Canadian National ET44AC 3271 was doing the honors at the lead today. It was another busy day in Atlanta on March 25th as I was waiting to assist a train crew at CP Jones Avenue. While I was waiting, I had a front row seat to see what would be running on the NS and CSX main lines. CSX loaded grain train G179-23 was up first as they approached downtown Atlanta heading towards Halsey Yard. They would take the Park Line at Kirkwood onto the SG Main as they head for Gainesville, Georgia. Then a little over 30 minutes pass, and here came NS Train 282 making an appearance heading for Chicago. Over an hour passes as I'm still waiting for my train crew. The NS radio, though, was still heavily active, as we now see train 42J passing by Jones Avenue heading towards East Point. They would run the Griffin District bound for Forsyth, Georgia. Then came local train G70, an Inman Yard to East Point turn job with a nice power consist. NSRP-M4C 651 was leading NSGP-33 Eco 4724 and NSGP-38-2 5217. Then, after getting off work, I get word about Q582 in Atlanta having 5 ex-Norfolk Southern SD60Ms. Timing it right, but with barely any daylight left, Q582-25 pulls northbound through the city of Smyrna, heading for Chattanooga. CSXT ES44AH 3015 was at the lead. Right as Q582 was approaching Spring Street, train Q211 had called a clear block at the milepost OWNA 15.9 intermediate signal. It was a tail-end meet with Q582. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, this was the last Q211 I was able to capture before automotive plants started shutting down. All Autorack cars were placed in storage until things started lifting up. Early in the morning on March 26th, I had just dropped off a train crew at CP Main Street Connection in LaGrange, Georgia, where the CSX Lineville and A&WP subdivisions split off. As soon as I was fixing to leave, train Q647 slowly approaches the traffic congestion ahead. The sun rose as I grabbed breakfast before heading back to Atlanta. Chilling at South LaGrange, an incoming northbound was approaching. It was Q12625, carrying international containers between Savannah, Georgia and Memphis, Tennessee. Later that afternoon, I get a call from work to assist a train crew at the Total Distribution Services Incorporated, or TDSI, outside of Lawrenceville, Georgia. While waiting for my crew, road local A717 was heading northbound to Palmer Yard in Decula. The TDSI train crew uses their engine given to them by CSX, MP15 number 1148, still holding its RS5T horn. They then come back out, getting the empty tanker cars for train K442, who was waiting at the mainline switch. This was the train I was currently assisting. Then, after K442 put their train together, I dropped off the conductor at Hosea Road and get caught at the crossing before heading back south. This nice power consist consisted of CSX YN2 AC44CW 519, UP C45 ACCTE 7497, and KCSM ES44AC 4655. After finishing my trip, I went for Marietta to get K442 again, but they had just dropped off the KCSM motor at Howell Yard. So it was just the CSX and UP units together heading for Bensonville, Illinois. Finally, on March 30th, with the COVID-19 protocols starting to take full effect on our country, and on the hunt of trying to find more toilet paper, I made a stop in Cook Springs, Alabama, as I'm heading back to Atlanta from Birmingham. Amtrak Train 19 is seen heading westbound for its next station stop at Birmingham Station. I had heard on the radio an eastbound was in the Leeds area. Cook Springs has been on my bucket list of things to see for a long while, and is probably one of the more populated places for rail fans to climb up and capture trains on the East End. It's a bit of a steep hike though to get here. Amtrak met NS Train 22G at CP Brompton. Once they cleared, clear signals were given to 22G non-stop, heading for Atlanta. For my first train at Cook Springs, this was one lucky catch. They were powered by UP SD70M 4110, UP C45 AH 8182, and NS SD70 ACC 1803. 22G comes from the Union Pacific Railroad out of Long Beach, California, interchanging with KCS in Shreveport, Louisiana, and then interchanging again with NS at Meridian, Mississippi, before reaching its final destination in Atlanta, Georgia. Since I was heading east, I caught 22G again, getting ahead of them to the town of Oxford, Alabama at a little more speed. My last train of the month was all the way back in South Georgia, in the small town of Warm Springs. I had just left Manchester as CSX train Q514 was heading northbound towards Birmingham, with a trio of ES44DC engines and an SD40-2 last out in the power consist. Q514 is a daily manifest freight train out of Waycross, Georgia, heading for Nashville, Tennessee. They would work Boyle's Yard in Birmingham before proceeding northbound. that's going to do it for the month of March. But stay tuned for a few extras coming out in the near future. Please hit the like button if you enjoyed today's video, and I encourage anyone new to my channel to hit that subscribe button and enable that notification bell as well to be notified on new videos being released. See y'all next time from Warm Springs, Georgia at milepost ANJ 793.4 along CSX's Lineville subdivision.
CSX detector, milepost 793.3 north track, no defects. Repeat, no defects. Total axles 644, length 993, 5, detector out.